Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is Independent School District 832. It's a regular board meeting for the Mahtomedi School Board. It's Monday, January 27th, 2025, 7:00 p.m. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call of attendance.
Done.
Thank you. Approval of the agenda. I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the agenda with flexibility.
So moved.
Moved by Director Regan, seconded by Director Donna. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Presentations or none? I'm sorry. I put it in the wrong slide. Oh, the consent agenda.
Yep.
Just moving all over. Thank you. I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda. By Director Doman.
Second.
Second by Director Peterson. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, no presentations. And now the report from our student rep. Welcome, Max.
Well, hello. Haven't seen you guys in about 2 months or so. So I just got to hit all the big points. And I heard this might be a long meeting, so I'll try to keep it a little bit shorter. The biggest thing that happened, I got a haircut, if you noticed. I had to put that out there. Okay, and student council, we pack gifts around the holidays for the community, kids there. In past years, we handed them out, but the past year and this year, we come to the District Education Center here for a couple hours. We pack all the gifts. I know some of the elementary, middle school kids actually go and buy the gifts, and we wrap them and send them out to kids in the community. That's always fun. Right now, we're planning for the Snow Coming Formal, which is actually this Saturday, so that'll be a blast. And the winter medallion hunt has started. So I know Minneapolis kind of has their own, but we actually have one in the school where Mr. Lane hides it, and the prize this year is a mini iPad, which is actually $500-600. So it's a competition. Now in the elementary schools, they got to visit the STEM fair, which was put on by the high school with the NASA Hunch group and some of the engineering classes, engineering 2 and 3, I believe, where they got to go see a bunch of the Rube Goldberg machines, which if you're not familiar, they just put a bunch of contraptions together that kind of activate each other to do something in the end. Really complicated, and that was hard to put together, as I was told. Now in February is actually I Love to Read Month at Wildwood. And as part of the month, they have a bunch of dress-up days throughout the month, which are book theme, which is pretty cool. In the middle school, they actually had a spelling bee on the 15th, and Jonathan Palmquist, the winner, actually now has a chance to qualify for the Regional Scripps National Spelling Bee later this year, which is really impressive. And also in the middle school, a student, Haley Parr, actually performs in New York City for the Great Christmas Cookie Bake-Off musical, which is impressive. It's near Broadway. Now in the high school, Mott Deca made it to state, which is really awesome. So happy to see them there. And also in the high school, Evan McGuire is about to pass the Mahtomedi High School pin record of all time, which is 181 wins. I think I could beat him, but he's pretty good. Now the MAIF scholarships are currently open. So if you have kids, apply to those. I know I did a whole presentation last year in English on that, and there's a lot of them. So you'll probably get one if you apply. And the senior all-night party planning meeting is on the 29th for parents. That's the first meeting, which is in 2 days. And I think I covered everything big.
Thank you. Now for our superintendent report.
That haircut just gave you a lot of confidence, huh? Beating Evan McGuire would be quite something. All right. Okay, just an overview. I'll share some things around the district, including awards and noteworthy news. And just a reminder about our facilities questionnaire and some upcoming events. We just had kindergarten registration and open house. Just a shout out to our kindergarten teachers and those who organize. Nanette Chow also is a big part of organizing that kindergarten open house. It is they run a very smooth operation there with getting as many kids and families through as they did. It was really both informational and a lot of fun. So we're looking forward to welcoming those families in the fall. We had a couple spelling bees, not just the middle school, but also OHA. And we had a 5th grade student, Karia Evan, also who is the champion at OHA. And Max already mentioned Jonathan Paulquist. And that's an annual event that is hosted by Catherine Margit, our advanced learner coordinator. So we are looking for volunteers to support our high school students at the MHS Career Internship and Volunteer Fair on April 11th. And there is a Google form that where you can submit interest via that Google form. And so this will be linked in the e-news, and so then you'll be able to access that there. So if you're looking to recruit dedicated interns, or we're also looking for volunteers to just help students reviewing their resumes as well. So hopefully we can get some good interest to support our students at the high school. So the winter and spring catalog is available now. The 2025 winter spring catalog for community ed is available. And the summer catalog registration will launch on March 19th. I know once that launches, a lot of people, things fill up pretty quickly. So pay attention to that date for some of the summer events. You may have heard, I think we talked about it already, the computer science grants that our schools were awarded at the beginning of this year. They've already started working through the grant through MDE. And we are one of 12 districts to receive this, and it's being used to support professional learning, some planning, and some resources as well, so that we can to enhance student learning in areas like logical thinking, problem solving, and collaboration. And so it's it's a K-12 endeavor, so it's not just classes at the high school, but also strengthening our K-8 curriculum offerings that support computer science. I don't know if you saw it on Facebook or in our social media, Wyatt Tarnowski, graduate of 2024, was selected for the AP Art and Design digital exhibit. He's one of 50 students among 80,000 student portfolios that were selected for that honor. So he submitted his AP Art and Design exhibit last year, and it was selected just recently. So I didn't even know we did this. I just learned this recently. Oscar Otto was recently named the winner of the National Young Writers Ridiculous Writers Contest. I hadn't heard of this before. Is this new this year? Last year was the first year for our Ridiculous Writers Contest. So his Magical Pizza mini saga was one of 3 stories chosen to win the award. So congratulations to Oscar. We had some 916 students of the month. So 916 honors 1 student from each of their 20 programs each month. And so 3 of our students were chosen as 916 students of the month. Just a reminder of our facilities questionnaire that will be closing at the end of this week. This was an opportunity just to get some feedback from families, staff, alumni, community members to learn more about support for fundraising and the idea of a private-public partnership on our facilities projects in the coming years. Just some upcoming events. So you might want to take note. I know the Sweetheart Dance is always a popular one because I happen to see it happening here in the district office. But there are a number of upcoming events that I just highlight here. And at that middle school youth night, I think you've talked about that, Jenny, at the middle school. that was one of the things you had mentioned to me. That's coming up in February as well. Right? Oh, you've mentioned it here.
Yeah, and Ryan asked if dances are coming back. So
Oh, that was
here's
Ryan.
a slow
Sorry.
start.
There you go. Okay. And that's what I have.
Great, thank you. Okay, so now we are going to jump over to number 11 action items, B and C, because we want to let our auditor go ahead and
11, so 11B is actually the approval of resolution ratifying the award of sale of refunding bonds with Tim Erickson and Matthew Hammer from Ellers together.
I'm going to let Matt talk a little bit about this. We've been talking.
Will you come to the mic, please?
Yes, I will. Thank you. So I'm going to let Matt talk about this. We've been talking to the board about this for quite some time, and our results going out to sale day on the bonds were really favorable. So I'm going to let Matt talk a little bit about that. We'll garner some savings and position ourselves well for the future. So with that, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Good evening. Matthew Hammer from Ellers, District's financial advisor. I'm just happy to go in front of Jim here tonight. We've been following each other around for about the last month here. So I'm here tonight to talk about the results we received last week. We were able to move forward with refunding sale of the district's 2014 A bonds. So we issued new bonds, the 2025 A bonds, to replace those. And we saved about $1.5 million for taxpayers, which is outstanding results. We've been watching this for about the last 4 months. We're looking at moving forward at the last fall, put the sale on hold, and now we're able to capture what we typically see in January, which is a dip in the market. And our timing, I think, was very good for being in the market to garner some savings for taxpayers. In our sale day report, we received a large number of bids, which is indicative of the demand that's out there right now for municipal securities. As part of that, Key Bank was the low bidder, and they offered a true interest cost of 2.97%. So I'll get into a little bit of the details of that. You'll notice that the coupon rates or the interest rates were the same, but we're in a market right now that offers premium bids. So if we look at the overall issue, the 2014 bonds had about a little bit north of $22 million of principal left on them. You'll see the par amount of the new bonds is $20,850,000. So if you think of that, right, we're issuing less principal to pay off principal that was 22 million, and we get to that with a premium bid. So in essence, the underwriter's offering cash. We don't have to issue as much principal, and we take that savings, and that equates to a true interest cost. So what you're seeing there of 2.97%, even though those coupon rates are the same on the issue. So I think overall, we're really pleased with the results. The district had a parameters resolution in place, so those bonds were actually signed off last week with the proposal because it came in underneath the parameter that we had reestablished at the beginning of the month. And we were way underneath that parameter because that parameter was reset at 3.7%, and being under 3 is an outstanding result as part of the sale. The district did go through a rating process as part of this, which I think is important to point out. The district's rating is, underlying rating is AA-, which is an outstanding rating for a school district. It puts you in the top 20% of districts that have ratings with S&P, which allows you to get good rates when you're out in the market in this type of situation, especially when we're trying to create savings for taxpayers. So with that, I can answer any questions folks have about the sale process or anything else as you looked at the report that you wanted me to answer.
Director Doman.
You mentioned the AA- rating. I'm not super familiar with the world that you live in. What are the factors that lead to that rating?
And there's a lot of factors. I kind of call it things that you can control and things that you can't control, right? So there's factors that they look at from the standpoint of your economic base, your income in your community, all those pieces that are kind of outside your control. The pieces that you can control are your financial performance, right, as a school district, which has been strong. And then kind of your outlook as they look at several of the management factors that you have in place as a district with your committees and other things that you guys do a good job with. So there's a lot of factors that go into it, but you guys are doing a good job of controlling what you can control, is what I say, and that provides that that rating that when people are looking to purchase your bonds comes with that AA- rating.
Director Donna.
Madam Chair, I would just want to thank Tim and Matt and your team. I know this refunding wasn't the traditional refinancing. You did a lot of restructuring and appropriating some of the future plans. And that was appreciate your creativity.
Thank you for that. I think this puts us in a really good position and puts the district in a good position, right? We're also saving a lot of money for taxpayers as we go forward.
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to say I feel like we were very well prepared for this and we'd had conversations about this. We talked about the parameters. So, thank you for making it happen.
I'll just echo that. We were very happy with the news, and so thank you for being here and getting us to that point.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity for working with you on this project, and we're very, very pleased with the results. I think this was everything we could have expected and a little bit more with the results we got last week. So awesome news.
Thank you. Oh, yeah. So can I get a motion for approval of resolution ratifying the award of sale of refunding bonds, Series 2025A? Moved by Director Donna. Seconded by Director Peterson. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. All right, now we'll move to the auditor's report. Start us off.
Eichten
Oh,
is here from
yes.
MMKR, so.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so Jim will come up and review the results of their audit of our books and records.
Oh, sure.
Mhm.
Sorry.
Madam Chair, Superintendent, members of the board, my name is Jim Eichten. I'm formerly with MMKR CPAs. I will quickly give a little bit of an update. As of January 1st of this particular year, my firm has actually merged with LB Carlson CPAs, a little bit larger firm, but collectively we will have better resources and team, an increase in our team to help with our particular practice. I don't expect my practice to change at all. Most of my team have transferred already to the new firm. The reason I bring it up tonight is I am representing MMKR. This report did get issued as MMKR, even though I do work for LB Carlson at this particular moment. The goal of this evening is to present the audit results for the year ended June 30th, 2024. It is the role of the auditor to audit the financial statements of the district. You are required to complete an annual financial statement. The district actually takes that particular financial statement and enhances it to be in compliant with the Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting program. The financial report is about 150 pages long. It has an intense amount of data in it. If you're interested in all kinds of data, you can find it in that particular financial report. My role with the district is to provide an opinion on that particular financial report, as well as follow other audit guidelines that are developed by the Office of the State Auditor in the state of Minnesota, as well as the Department of Education, as well as the federal government. As you can see on the PowerPoint, we do issue an opinions on the district's schedule of federal awards, your CFA, which is required by the federal government. We do audit your internal controls over financial reporting, as well as your internal controls over federal awards that you received, as well as state laws and regulations. There is a list of laws that the Office of the State Auditor provides to us that we audit. We don't audit all the laws that pertain, but just those on the list. So as part of my particular audit process, I do issue a management report, and in that management report, we provide information that is really in a presentation type format that you can read through and understand the audit results in that particular document if you will read it. But I'll present some of the highlights here this evening. First and foremost, we did plan out our audit report, our audit procedures to meet the scope and needs of the district. We didn't change that scope as we went through. Everything was very smooth and was completed on a timely basis. We submitted the data to the Office of the State Auditor and the Department of Education on both November 30th and December 31st on a timely basis. In terms of audit results, we were able to issue an unmodified opinion on that comprehensive financial statement that I mentioned. It is a clean opinion, really the opinion you were looking for going into the particular process. In that document, you'll note that I did issue what I would call a reportable item, which is the district does operate under a lack of segregation of duties environment when it comes to internal controls. If you read the documents, it is really considered a finding. I really report it as a reportable item. We have a lot of audits that are under this particular framework, and we audit under that understanding and look for what I would call compensating controls, other controls that are in place to make sure that they're compensating for that lack of segregation of duties in your accounting systems. So I react to that particular statement and say, what should change? I don't have anything to change, really. There's no recommendation there. It's just understand that that's the environment that you're under. Continuing on, in the Minnesota legal compliance area, we did issue 2 findings specifically related to 2 particular statutes that were required to test, one on withholding affidavits and one on unclaimed property. The first one is a requirement that the district receive a withholding affidavit from your vendor, verifying that they're paying their vendors withholdings. And that particular affidavit is required to be received prior to making the final payment on that contract. What happened here is it happened the other way. You actually made the payment on the contract and then received the withholding affidavit. So it was more of a lack of timeliness than it was related to not receiving the actual report that is necessary in this particular case. The same could be said for the unclaimed property report. Anytime the district has unclaimed property, which in this case is probably the best example is an outstanding check. You have property that somebody hasn't claimed, and anytime it gets it's sitting there for over 3 years, you're required to report that to the Department of Education, or in this case, the Department of Revenue at the state, and ultimately pay them or give them the unclaimed property is the process that would happen here. What happened there is that particular file or report didn't get filed timely. Again, it was due in November, it got reported a couple of months after that. So again, it's more of a timeliness of reporting and less we didn't do what we were supposed to do. Continuing on, you'll see that the single audit of federal awards, as noted there, we were able to issue a clean opinion on the district schedule of expenditures of federal awards. The district received about $2.5 million of federal awards this past year. We do audit these awards on a rotating basis based on federal requirements. So we audited the special education program this year based on rules and regulations. That being said, we did not have any findings to report in both the control areas of that testing as well as the compliance areas, which are lengthy when it comes to those federal awards. So all in all, the compliance results that we have here really are exceptional. We really have no findings to report on the financials. We didn't have any findings to report in those other areas in terms of controls. And the two findings we have really have to do with timeliness of reporting and less on compliance. So really good results when it comes to the audit this particular year in that area. Continuing on, my report does then get into financial results of the year, the financial results for the year ended June 30th, 2024. In my report, we do provide some information on comparables. This particular graph shows a graphical presentation of fund balances. Fund balances is a percentage of expenditures, which is a very commonly used percentage by school districts. This particular graph is using the Department of Education's percentage calculations. The district actually has its own separate calculation that I'll show you in a little bit. Why this is an important graph is you can see on the yellow bar that for many years the state fund balance as a percentage of expenditures was about 20%. And that particular percentage went up during the pandemic, mainly due to operational changes at the building levels, as well as federal revenues coming to districts as a result of some of the COVID funding. And then once operations kind of post-pandemic hit, you're seeing fund balances go down and you're seeing districts starting to struggle financially for both the same reasons. They're back to normal operations, costs are higher, then the lack of federal funding is it's dwindling, if you will. So that yellow bar that you're seeing is going to continue to go down based on my own prognostication. I don't have the data here to support that, but I anticipate that's going to occur. The blue line, again, is MDE's fund balance percentages calculations, and you can see it's a very stable, increasing fund balance environment over the last, what is that, about 6 years, really, of improving fiscal fund balance. And as of June of 2024, you're at 22.3% based on, again, MDE's calculations. So I really, when I look at that, it gives me warm fuzzies, truthfully. You like to see fund balances going up like that and creating the right environment for the kids. In my report, we do have information on revenues. This is governmental funds, all your funds collectively showing revenues on a per student basis. So what that means is the district is receiving about $19,115 per student in June of 2024. A couple of areas stand out to me in that graph, and that you can see in the state aid area, there was increases to state aids, both in the general education area as well as the state special education aid area, which are showing up as increases in that particular graph. You also see the aid increases to food service programming. If you remember, the state passed a free meals program, which is coming through in state aid revenue. On that particular graph, it went from $516 per student to almost $750 per student. On the flip side, we talk about, this graph shows expenditures on a per student basis. Again, this is stating that the district spent about $18,901 per student this past year to educate the district. Some of the things that stood out here is you can see that the largest increases were in regular instruction. Some of the instructional areas, specifically regular instruction for elementary and secondary kids, increased by about $640. There are some contractual increases there. Employee benefit increases, grant spending increased. In particular, that area had some curriculum purchases as well. You can see instructional support also increased, kind of almost stands out as a pretty significant increase. Mostly it was a one-time purchase of some instructional equipment that's happening in 2024 that will probably go back to normal given that the one-time nature of that. And you can also see the offset to the food service fund. You're seeing increasing revenues, and now you're seeing increased expenses for similar reasons. You have more food service programming going on with that free lunch program as well. Lastly, I'd like to always point out, and at this particular presentation, you can see your debt service fund expenditures there. You're spending about $1,598 in debt service. And if you look at the comparables, you're almost identical to the comparable debt service costs at your district, as well as compared to the metro and statewide. Important, really showing good fiscal responsibility when it comes to debt. So we get into individual fund information now. The general fund financial picture for 2024 stated a total fund balance increase of about 600,000. This compared to a fund balance budget that projected about $100,000 decrease. So more or less, you're about 800,000 better than you projected in your budget. This particular presentation here, I think it's probably even better shown here. You can see the general fund financial picture there showing total fund balances increased about 600,000 as mentioned. Unassigned fund balance went up a couple thousand. A couple of things I want to point on this page that are really important to understand. The first one is really when you look at that restricted fund balance, you might ask yourself, wow, why are we negative? What happened there? Well, there was a strategic initiative to get approval to have spending happen in an operating capital nature in advance of the receipt of the funding. So you went ahead and made purchases. The MDE did officially approve this particular transaction, and that is what you get is a spending ahead of the revenues showing a negative restriction. Pretty much fully acceptable. It's a very acceptable transaction. That was probably a positive for the district, certainly. The second item I want to point out that particular graph relates to the fund balance policy. The district does have a fund balance policy. The board is fully aware of the policy. The policy states that the school board will strive to maintain a minimum unassigned fund balance of 8%. That particular 8% is comparable to the bottom percentage there on that graph. The unassigned fund balance at the end of 2024 is 12.2%, certainly above that minimum. You can also see that that particular percentage has been very stable over the last, from 2022 to 2024. That particular percentage is very important to the board. It's used certainly to understand where you're at financially, as well as it does help understand when you get future information from the district as to, well, where are we at? How are we standing at the end of every 1 year? So an important policy to understand and make decisions on. So very good financial picture. We do provide information on general fund revenues, general fund expenditures. I will say that just when I get into the data points and look at it from a high level, the general fund revenues and general fund expenditures were very close to expectations. Why that's important as a board, you're making decisions on an everyday basis based on this budget. And at the end of the day, the budget, the financial audit held true to that budget. And what that means for you is you can make informed decisions, understanding that the audit will come true at the end of the day to those decisions that you're making. For instance, the general fund revenues were about 900,000 over the final budget. Most of that was in interest earnings. And really, it's difficult to budget what interest earnings are going to be. It's a difficult environment. So things like that really stand out to me, that you get that close in terms of your final budget to actual data, and you really can identify, well, that was just because of interest. On the expense side, it had to do with smart boards. We decided to buy some smart boards. We didn't really budget for, but it was a good decision and fully transparent to the board. So certainly very, very good results when it comes to budget to actual information. Continuing on, you have other governmental funds here, which shows this particular presentation. The food service fund did improve this past year, an increase of about 70,000. Most districts are experiencing positive operating results in their food service funds, mainly because of the free lunch program that the state is providing good financial resources. On the community service fund, you had an increase of about 30,000. You can see very solid results the last few years. That particular fund has about $836,000 fund balance. I would suggest that that particular fund is doing better than your peers. Most districts are really struggling in the community ed area to try to financially support those particular programs. And when you look at that graph, things seems very stable in that area. That's not what I've been saying at many of the presentations that Matt has heard. So I think I had some others. I will highlight the district has several other funds, including the Capital Project Building Construction Fund. You have a debt service fund, an internal service fund for dental, as well as a post-employment benefit trust fund. The one area I would point out this past year that in the Capital Project Building Construction Fund, there were some significant insurance proceeds that were used to do some roofing repairs, which are showing up in your financial report as almost extraordinary items if you get into the details, but certainly a transactional item that stood out to me. So that's the end of my presentation. So in summary, I was able to issue a clean opinion on the financial report. We had the one reportable item on segregation of duties. We had the 2 legal compliance findings for timely reporting in those 2 certificates. There are 2 areas. Certificate of Achievement Program, hopefully with positive results, you'll receive an Excellence in Financial Reporting Award. You have an improving, if not stable fund balance in your general fund. Adherence to the district's fund balance policy is very important. And then lastly, I want to just state the management of the district is really a highlight for me when it comes to this audit. Everybody takes this audit process very seriously. They're very dedicated to getting the audit information to me and getting the data and things complete. And it doesn't always look like that in my world. And I just want to highlight that the district is very supportive of what we're doing here and making sure we're doing it the right way and getting these audit results completed and done properly. So with that, I'll turn it over to you for any questions.
I have one question. Thank you for this. This is now multiple years that I've had the opportunity to hear the audit report. And the question I've had year over year and still not super clear on is exactly what you said of we were given the clean opinion, but we have the reportable item of something that the word significant is what worries me, right? Significant deficiency,
Yep.
yet you're saying on the other hand, nothing we should worry about.
Right.
So why report it?
Okay. Well, why? Let's answer the first question. It is a finding in this audit in that you have lack of segregation of duties. You just don't have the size of the business office that is needed to segregate all of the transactional areas that are needed. So the best example that I can give is an accounts payable. There should be 3 or 4 people involved in an accounts payable process to segregate it properly, and you probably have 2, involved in the process. So we go into this audit with full understanding that that's the case, right? We just know that that's something that you're limited by, right? So I'm going in with the understanding that I'm not going to really even audit that. I'm going to audit the compensating controls. So the first question you have there is, what was it? Significant deficiency, right? Okay, so there's 2 choices. I've been giving 2 choices to report this finding. I can either call it a significant deficiency, or I can call it a material weakness. That's all I get. Those are the 2 I get. They don't give me any more options. Both of those don't sound great, but actually the worst one is material weakness, and I'm giving you the lower one, which is significant deficiency. I can't get any lower than that. The word sounds horrible. I agree with you, but that is the words used in nature. So your second question is why give the finding, right? Was that your secondary question?
Yeah, it's something you're kind of set, you said when you explained it, that's something we really couldn't control.
Right.
Because of our size.
That's a great question. It is something you can control. Okay. So you could choose, I'm not suggesting this, I'm just giving you the could. You could hire more people. You could say to yourself, well, if we needed to eliminate this finding, we need to hire 2 more people in this area and 2 more people in this area and 2 more people in this area. And that would eliminate the finding, right? At least in my opinion. The district is really choosing not to do that because that's not cost effective. The benefits of you gain would be more expensive than what you're gaining out of that, right? The costs outweigh the benefits is what I'm trying to say. So you choose not to. You choose to accept the finding in your audit report because it's going to be too costly not to, right? So that is the cost benefit. So yes, you are choosing, and I'm saying, well, I accept that. I think that's okay. Every district is doing that at your level.
And you need to report, and so the auditor needs to report this to the board so that year after year, you know that's something we should be watching too. I mean, like, so it has to be reported. Even though we know it's there, it's still something we have to talk about. Thank you.
And I think you just touched on this, but just to make sure that it didn't get missed, this is typical for a district our size to have.
Yes.
And we've had it for as long as I've been here.
We have recommended not to get too off track, but if a district were to grow or get bigger or larger, there is a threshold in standard that would say if you get to this point, maybe you shouldn't have that segregation of duties. So we do get to that stage on where we recommend maybe you should get rid of that by hiring more people. You're not there. But
And you work with districts that are quite a bit bigger than we are that
Yes.
has that finding.
I do. Yeah, I do. I mean,
I'm not naming any. I'm just saying, I know it exists.
there is a threshold, seriously, like you
Yeah.
can go down the list and say it's about right about here. Yep, it's a good question.
Hey, any other, oh, yes.
Do these audit reports directly impact the bond rating criteria? Like, is this one of the input items when we're being evaluated for bond issuances?
I would say yes. Matt could probably answer that too, but yes, they do get vetted by S&P and the rating agencies, yes. Mhm. Do they look at the findings? Probably not, but they're looking more at the financial picture and the financial results and the long-term financial stability in many cases.
Madam Chair, I'd just like to thank Jim for this report. And I think this is really, the clean opinion is what we seek, right? And that's a testament to our finance department and our leadership with the superintendent as well. So thank you very much.
I think that's it. And I'll echo that. Thank you and appreciate all you do and the reports you continue to provide.
Thank you.
You need to make a motion to approve.
Yes, thank you. Just about to move on. Okay, so I would appreciate if someone could make a motion for approval of independent auditor's report. Moved by Director Doman,
Second.
seconded by Director Whitson. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. So now we will return to item 10. And this is the discussion of board member calendar. Does anyone have anything they'd like to call out? Yes, Director Regan.
So we're talking about the calendar, right?
Yes.
So I'm still looking for somebody who has availability to attend the Curriculum Advisory Committee meeting next week. So if you are available, if you could let Leslie know or Barb know, that would be great.
How about I just do it?
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Okay. Yep, where does it meet? Does it say? Oh, here, okay.
Thank you.
We might have talked about this at the January 6th meeting, but I think, were you covering me on the February 5th PTO meeting that morning?
Nope.
No. Is anyone able to cover me on the Mahtomedi PTO meeting on February 5th?
At what time?
It's at 9:30. I thought that committee met in the evenings.
It switches. But we can, yes. If no one else can, I think I can. I'll confirm. Okay, anything else? Okay, thank you. Mid-year financial report.
Okay, so this is our as you said, mid-year financial report. So I'll just run through some of the line items, and please feel free to ask any questions as I go through it. So what we do here is we're showing two years of actual expenditures on that left-hand column, two left-hand columns. And then the middle section is our current year budget. And then what we've received year to date is that next column over to the right of that. And then you can see the remaining budget. And then also as kind of a perspective of what all of that means, we look at percentages, percentage of budget received. And then the other column over is percentage of actuals received, and that's compared to the last year actuals. So it kind of gives us a good indication when you're looking at those percentages of are we tracking okay. So when we look at that first line under the revenue categories is state revenue. And so you can see that's 27%, 27%. So we're tracking right on. That one is very consistent because of the way the state meters out our payments. So there's usually not much of a variance there. When we look at federal revenue, of course, that one is down significantly. So when you look at percentage of budget received, it's 7.43% versus the 12.24%. And part of that is just due to those large pandemic relief funds. And that last year was our last fiscal 24 was our last year of that. So that's why we'll see that difference there. And then when you get to property taxes, that's metered out. It's predictable. So we're looking at 91% for each of those years. Then when we get to local fees, interest, that type of thing, we see a variance, a pretty big variance there in the budget compared to last year. And that's just a function of we're making more interest. As interest rates rose up, we were able to lock in some investments, and we're just seeing a lot more interest there, which is good news, right? We can't always depend on that because it's based on interest rates, and those are moving all the time. But in this case, we're in good shape there. And then the totals, you can see we're running about 45% of the budget received this year versus a 42% last year at that same time. Then I'll run into expenditures. So I look at salaries and wages, and that one normally that one is going to vary depending on timing, but normally running in the upper 30s to low 40s. In this case, we're at 43% right now versus 38. And then when we get down to benefits, that one has a little bit larger variance. And one of the biggest impacts is we're doing an accounting entry. We're doing it earlier so we get more timely financial information and kind of know where we're standing. That's a payment into an HRA account. So and that was just reversing that year-end entry and reversing that early enough. So it doesn't get skewed. And at this point, it is a little bit skewed because of that entry. But next year, you'll look at that and it'll be more in line. The other part we have is we have state-supported unemployment expense, and that one's that newer item over last year and this year. We have the state unemployment aid that's coming in. In this case, we've got the expense. We don't have the aid in yet. It's a reimbursable, so we apply for reimbursement on that. Purchase services, that one's pretty steady, 42% versus 46% last year. That bottom one, supplies, that's going to be tech lease payments in that one. And then we had a larger textbook purchase, so that drives that number up a little bit. And then equipment, other expenses, that one always varies. But expenditures, you can see expenditures vary a lot more than when we look at our revenues, because the revenues and the big parts of our revenues are metered out by the state and then by the tax levy and the local and the payments on the tax levy. So any questions on that? Nope. Okay. I won't get into all the bottom part. We're going to be bringing we'll be bringing a budget revision update to you in this next month. So we'll see those numbers change a little bit. So, okay.
The only question I have for you, Tim, on this is at the bottom, actually. So what was presented in the auditor's report, again, looking back, right? So it looked like that unassigned total percent of expense was somewhere around the 12%.
Right.
But moving forward, projected end of this school year will be 8.9%, right? I just wanted clarification on that.
Right, yeah. But that's, we're going to bring that budget revision, so that number two will change a little bit as we go forward.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, budget parameters for budget reductions and adjustments for FY 25-26.
Okay, so this is just a discussion so we have been talking about the budget for a little while now and getting ready for what we will be doing for budget reductions and adjustments for 25-26. And you have given me some feedback, and we've had some conversation together, and individuals have talked to me a little bit as well. And what I'm asking for you today is to just kind of let's just talk through the parameters that you would, or give me some opinions, some things you want us to think about as we bring forward budget reduction ideas for you at our next meeting. So the plan is, again, you're going to give us some parameters. Then on the 10th of February at our study session, our administration is going to put together, based on those parameters, our recommendations for reductions. You'll give us some feedback again, either affirming things we brought forward or asking questions or asking us to bring you more information, so that at the end of the month of February, again, still big picture, you'll be giving us what you're going to approve the budget reductions and adjustments that we're going to make, and then the administration moves forward with those things. As a reminder, we're still early in the process, and things can change as we learn more about what happens at the state level and the legislative session, if it ever really gets going. So we'll know more by the end of the school year, but this is the process we need to go through now so that we're ready for that. Okay. So again, we've talked about a number of areas. I've listed some of them here. There may be some others for you. And my recommendation is we just kind of go through this, if that's okay with you, the process. Okay. So you've gotten a lot of information about our budget, our audit, as well. So hopefully that helps kind of frame things for you. One of the conversations we have is about the fund balance. And so one of the recommendations we had was to use some of the fund balance to help so that the reductions weren't as significant. And so I guess one of the things I'd like some feedback on is use of the fund balance. And we had made the recommendation of about $1 million. So if you want to give us some feedback on that.
Director Peterson.
That projected fund balance Kelly brought up so low, taking into account the $1 million missing?
Tim, can you come up and help us with that question?
So right now we're doing, we're in the middle of doing some projections. So if we're looking at that, and I don't have an exact number yet, we're fine tuning that stuff before we bring it back to you, but we'll be above board policy. If we dip into fund balance by $1 million, we'll be above board, still be above board policy of the 8%.
25, 26.
But the number Kelly pointed out, is that taking into account this?
Those are older numbers now. So unfortunately, when we do that, we're doing a projection, so they're a little bit older numbers.
So those numbers too are for the end of this school year. We're talking about next year. It is confusing because you just heard an audit report about at the end of the 23-24 school year.
Mhm.
And then you also, Kelly pointed out the budget, it was on this one, Tim's report, was for the end of this school year that we're in, is the 8.94%, about 9% fund balance. We're talking about the 25-26 school year, and that's the one we're recommending using $1 million. And that and alongside reductions, but
So that our fund balance can take a hit of $1 million at your projected 8.94 and still stay above 8?
Right, and a part of that was the things that we did, the actions that we took last year to kind of prepare for that. Part of it was that accessing that deficit fund balance in the capital reserve, that was 40 some thousand dollars. So that helped to shore us up, you know. But, yeah, you
and
bet.
then interest coming in where
And
that also-
yes, and interest earnings we've been really fortunate there too, is that the interest earnings are quite a bit higher. So those are some of the things that you'll see, you know, we'll be adjusting in the next budget revision that we bring to you in February, as you'll see the results of that as well.
are not things we knew of when we set the budget last June, but those were things that we've worked through since then.
The question is,
Is there any, we're going to be bringing forward a recommendation to use fund balance, not to go below fund balance policy. We're saying it's about $1 million. I guess I'd like to know if there's any objection to that or any other feedback you want to give us on that.
Director Doman.
It's not an objection from my perspective as much as it is just a reminder of where we were 6 months ago when we had the discussion about the fund balance. And as a board, I think we really were apprehensive about even going below 9% 6 months ago. And now we're talking about going towards 8%. And again, it's not saying that that's not the right solution to the problem. It might be part of the solution. I just want us all to be aware of that feeling that we had 6-9 months ago and how kind of we weren't totally comfortable, you know, dropping below that. I think 9.4% was the one that kind of sticks out in my mind.
I'll try and stick to the one point you're bringing up because it's bringing all sorts of other things to my head as well. But I mean, I don't think that this is going to be easy no matter how we look at it. And when we look at the amount of, you know, amount of budget deficit we're in. However, I think we're going to have to be cognizant of what you mentioned, Ryan. I think we did talk about that, and I think that that's something that's important. I also think that, again, trying to stick to the question you asked, I think we're going to probably have to utilize some of our unassigned fund balance in order to not make the cuts to the classrooms deep. And so that gets me to my next point, but I'll let you keep going with your other suggestions because to me, that's the most important, is that it doesn't impact our teachers and our kids, that they feel it the least amount.
I would just add that I think this is a time to be using our fund balance. This is why we've been holding it. So when we hit a time like this, where there are a lot of expenses outside of our control, we can weather it. But I do agree with not going below our balance policy. Director Donna.
Madam Chair, I would just, I completely agree. Fund balance is going to be a part of the solution. But I'll just echo what I mentioned before. I hope when we go through this process, we're just not looking at next year. We're looking at we can't, part of that fund balance is not only to get us through the next year, but it's also to get us through the following year as well. So, thank you.
Anything else? Any other comments?
Tim, is this 8% only, or is the assigned fund balance as a percent, is that only measured once a year or is it measured every month?
No, it's measured once a year at June 30th. Yeah.
So we could go below that as to what we talked about in the finance meeting without triggering any of the other policies.
Yes, so in reality, it's up and down on a monthly basis, on a daily basis, actually. So, yeah, good question.
The next one, just for some context, we have used something called the BrightWorks class size study, and it's a metro class size study that is put together by our service co-op. And prior to the pandemic, our elementary class sizes were about, depending on the grade level, about one more than the Brightboard study. Let me try that again. The average class size in the metro area in elementary is about one more than it was post-pandemic, so they all dropped. So we used to use the metro average. We've always used the metro average, and the metro average used to be higher, and we had class sizes at that range back before the pandemic. We've been running lower class sizes at the elementary because that's the metro average because that's how we've always measured it. So I mentioned that because one of our recommendations is to look at increasing elementary class size by one, which would put us back to what they were prior to the pandemic. So that's one of the things that I was looking, and we may find that's supposed to come out in February, that class size study. So we'll see what they are now too, but that's one of our recommendations as well.
One I feel strongest about. Do we have to compare ourselves to district? Can we stay small and not have to follow that? 27. Ugh. I don't know what. Nothing good comes from bigger classes, does it? Except some dollars. I just have always loved that small classes we offer here. We are envied for it. It's just something I feel strongly about. I know we talked in our meeting, one doesn't seem like a lot, but when I see it on paper, it does.
So the one, kindergarten 21, first grade 22, second grade 23, third grade 24, fourth grade 26. Fifth grade is the one place it jumps to. So if you want me to keep it at 26, then fifth grade.
Fourth and fifth seem like.
Can you quantify what this increase brings in terms of helping us?
So every student, we talked about earlier the average, I'm sorry, is it 14,000, 14,600 or so in aid?
Yeah, it varies a little bit, but yeah, 14 to 15,000.
So by increasing class size, it would bring in, we have about 9 sections in every elementary. So it would bring in, how much that is offhand.
And would that, you said, so grade 4 right now is 25 students and grade 5 is 26?
Well, let me just say that that's the number we use to determine class size caps, I guess, is when we're figuring out. So currently our 4th grade is small. We just didn't have the enrollment in 3rd and 4th grade. Those are both under. But what we do, and I'll just say these are average class sizes. So when we determine class sizes at the beginning of the year, they go up and down during the year depending on ins and outs of resident enrollment. But
Quick back out of the napkin math, it's probably 700 grand, give or take 100. So it's not insignificant. And I tend to share Jenny's opinion, like that rises to the top for me of like last thing we'd probably want to consider. But again, to Stacy's point, like we'll need to, and this applies to all of them, like understand like directionally how much money each one of these reductions truly is as we look to figure out a combination that makes sense.
okay. Yes, and it's a good point because again, this is our list of things to choose from and figure out what to do with. So this is one of the options that we're bringing forward.
I understand the math on the incremental number of students connected to incremental revenue. What is the offsetting incremental expenses associated with each incremental student? Because there must be some offsetting, it can't purely marginal. It has to have some offsetting expenses to quantify that.
Educate
And so we could figure out we could use some part of that model that we talked about last time, potentially.
Right, yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you know, it wouldn't be adding classrooms, it wouldn't be adding staff. Necessarily, it could be, I mean, I guess.
I mean, you look at technology, like Chromebooks, I mean, yeah, there'd be more or
Textbooks.
less Chromebooks, more or less textbooks.
But you're not counting, it's like the electricity bill is the electricity bill. It's not divided by student, right? So whether you have 22 students or 26 students in a classroom, they're not going to count that cost. So that I think is why you're not going to capture every cost per student.
Right, we would call those fixed costs in our world here, the utility bills. Yeah, those things are not going to change. You know, really, when you look at, you know, the incrementally bringing in students or adding additional students over the course of a year, it doesn't result in any additional facilities costs as far as, you know, custodial, that type of thing, because we're still cleaning. They go on, you know, we go based on a square footage per cleaner, in that case. So it's not based on students. Of course, there's a little bit of increased traffic, but it's kind of inconsequential.
We'll talk about that as an option, but what I'm hearing is the value of, there's value in staying small at the elementary.
Madam Chair, just a question, and I'm not saying that 27 or 21 or 23 is the right number, but obviously the numbers increase with the grade. I'm guessing, is there more capacity for a fifth grade teacher to handle more kids are there underlying reasons why they can typically handle more kids? Is that,
Independence.
okay, all right.
And you'll see, you know, just like middle school will be higher and high school will be
Yeah.
higher.
Okay.
That's
Thank you.
typical. And again, we're looking at average across the metro as an indicator. Mhm. Okay. We also, oh, sorry.
Oh, thank you. I just have to get emotional for one more second on this. I know this is about money, but I don't think parents, the kid in the classroom, or the teacher wants more kids in the classroom. And it's another behavior, you know, you were talking about, Paul, what is it more of? But we're adding to the teacher another behavior, another portfolio to build, another grading, I know, you guys can tell me how much money it brings in, but I'm just stuck on these small classes.
Yeah, which is why we traditionally keep them below the metro average. I mean, like, that has been a commitment this district has had for a long time. And we're in a budget situation that requires us to do some things differently. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having that conversation. So, but
I'll just add one thing if I can before we move on to the next one. I mean, I would agree in the fact that, I don't know why my microphone is so much louder than everyone else's. Maybe I should sit back here. I would agree that ideally this would be great to keep them the size that they are and be below that average class size. And I think that is one of the things that, you know, of many things that makes us unique. Again, I'll just state my earlier point that I just really hope to see as few staff and sections and offerings and things. I know we're just talking elementary here, but I think that there's just going to have to be, in my opinion, a little bit of everything for us to figure out how to make this happen. So this one is for sure not at the top of my list at all, like if we were kind of rank ordering them. But I think that we might just have to think about what that looks like, and maybe it's only at certain grades or, you know, so
Right.
anyway, that's my thought.
yeah, and that's fine. And the reason those two are at the top is those are our biggest
Yeah.
classes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We get fewer savings as in a couple other places. So we have athletics and activities, coming up with some ideas about potentially reducing activities that have low enrollment, looking at ways we can be more efficient with transportation. And when I say efficient with transportation, some of that might be not having transportation to We already do some of this where we don't have transportation for games that are really close by and rely on families to help. So, also not ideal, but one of the ways we could look at that, we could also look at fee increases. And so those are things that we'd be potentially bringing forward. Does anyone have any comments on any of those?
I have one comment on that, and I guess I would want to know a little bit on specifics on what low enrollment, because maybe that's just I can't think of one, but obviously baseball isn't low enrollment. It has multiple teams, but what are some examples of that with low enrollment? Because maybe that sport or activity or whatever is naturally a small number, and if that means getting rid of that just because that group is small. I don't know. That's what I'm looking for,
No, it's a
specifics.
good point, because it is the case that one of the things that we pride ourselves of what's going on at the high school is how many opportunities there are for students. And anything we, reduce because it's low enrollment, we definitely have activities that have low enrollment. So, and the cost savings would be the stipend if it's a stipended position for a teacher. So. Okay. Mhm.
Is there a way to then help families that prices them out of playing baseball?
So we do have scholarships for families. And I can have, when Aaron's here to talk about that, I can ask him to.
And that's for
That is
any
fine.
activity.
Right.
Would the transportation efficiencies reflect a new policy on transportation based upon distance from the district? Like a certain district based upon a sport or a,
I don't know if it would be a policy. I don't know that we have a policy when it comes to activities and transportation. I'll have to look at that. Certainly a practice. It would be a change in practice, but I
practice?
don't know that it's at the board level. I'd have to look and see if there's a board level policy.
And just as an example that, like you said, we would, if there was a tennis match that was close by, the assumption is there's enough parents that are going to watch that there would be enough parents to bring the kids home. So we would save, we'd only have to bring them there, but not have to pay for the bus to come back.
That
that
is
right?
what some districts do right now.
Are there other when you say transportation efficiencies, are there other things like that on top of that that you'd have?
That's one that I have in my head because I know it's a practice in other districts, but I don't know offhand, but I can ask Aaron. Aaron Forsyth is working through some of these things for us. Okay. We also have district-wide staff. We do have positions that do not work directly with students. They work in other ways to support teachers and administrators and other staff. So I have that as a possible reduction for you to comment on as well. You have to have a superintendent by law, so I just want you to know that.
Put your hand down,
Legally,
Kelly.
I'm required. All right, go on.
That takes my question away.
Yeah.
That is not what I was going to say.
All right, go ahead.
But I think every school district is having to take a look at what positions were added since COVID and COVID federal dollars were available. And with that not being available, it'd be, I think, really something to maybe consider what has been added since that time. And probably many of those things are really important and necessary, but I just think that would be a good thing to consider.
Okay, anything else? Okay, with regard to open enrollment, we've discussed this a couple of times now, but in depth at a study session. We are continuing to move forward with accepting open enrollment as long as doing so does not require adding additional instructional space and stays within class size parameters that we've talked about, or we will be talking about again. Are there any comments on that?
So that kind of ties into the elementary class size. Do we have physical capacity? Because I know we've used to have a lot more students that are older. Do we have capacity to actually add another full section at all? Do we don't have the space?
No, we do not. We do not. We have larger class sizes.
Okay.
And we also had, at the middle school was one place where we had more students at the middle school. So that was, I'd say that was one of our areas.
I thought there is a grade that right now we are one section short.
That grade is in 8th grade now. Mhm. They've made it to 8th grade, the small class.
So then to answer his question, they'd be going into 9th next year, and there's not sections really. Okay. Yeah.
But, I mean, there might be some reductions in that regard if we don't have as much enrollment at the high school. But, and we also don't, that's just been a small class throughout the district for a long time. The current, nope, we do not have one less section. The current 3rd and 4th grade are a little smaller than what they have been in the past. Mhm.
I'll just add that I think it would be good for, when we had just talked about open enrollment not too long ago, and that being closed, to take a look at, again, the individual grade levels and where there is capacity, obviously with what our infrastructure can sustain.
Yes, and I think, is that what you're,
I just want to confirm that we've open enrollment, the first window is done. And so typically we start letting families know if they've been accepted under open enrollment. And we've used the process that I've talked to you about before, about, again, looking at class sizes, current class sizes, rolling those up and figuring out, estimating what we have in terms of room. And so we would start that process shortly, right? In the next couple weeks, right? Notifying families. And typically, again, we leave some space for some, we don't fill it completely. We leave some space for resident enrollment and just changes in general to enrollment. So we get started. Okay, what I also have on here is one of the things we're going to look at the reason we can't really talk about secondary class size very easily is because it just really is, there are so many elective options and so many different ways students go with how their pathway works out. And so we would be looking at reducing courses that have low enrollment. So students at the secondary level are going to register shortly, and then based on that, we would be looking at not running certain courses that we might otherwise run, those with low enrollment. I'd say some of the things that we would, with the idea of not being super disruptive, one of the things we would be looking at is we would want to run those classes that are kind of the end of a progression. So Calculus BC, French 4, things that are at the end of like students are taking French all the way through, they would expect to take that CIS French 4 at the end. And so that would be a course that we would prioritize over something that maybe could be offered the following year for students. So there are some courses that maybe have low enrollment that we could offer the following year, and then students could take it then. So that would be kind of how we would look at it.
How does that translate to savings? You have to have at least a certain number of courses in total to eliminate a full head count. Is that what you have to do?
Yes. So let me say, so it would be pushing up class sizes at the secondary level and reducing.
That's what the savings comes from. Is if you get rid of 4 sections across high school, you can eliminate 1 full-time position. That's how the savings.
That's the idea. Mm-hmm.
Well, here goes my big idea. So you're going to probably think this one's crazy, but I'm just going to throw it out there to think of. I really don't like the idea of thinking about, I don't know what that bottom number is. Maybe you can tell me what that bottom number is, whether a course runs or doesn't run, and maybe it depends on the course. But I think about in the world that we're living in 2025, I think about how could we potentially have less courses cut, but is there a possibility to think about utilizing the technology we have to have more of a blended learning environment to offer courses differently? I don't know. I don't have the answer to it. I'm not saying, I'm just wondering if, instead of a bell-to-bell schedule, is there a way to concurrently?
Well, I will
I
say
don't
some
know.
of our teachers already do offer, they might have a few different sections of a class running at the same time. If it's a class, I'll just say engineering and art both do that quite a bit, where they might have a couple different levels of students in the lab at the same time.
I
But
get-
you're talking about more of a hybrid.
Well, I'm just trying to think of how to continue to offer the courses we have for our students today, have them not feel it and not lose staff as well, but be able to impact the budget. So I don't know what the answer is. I would look to Jen, I guess, for what those creative teaching and learning solutions are, if there's a way to do anything like that, to not just say it's on the chopping block and it's off. I don't know.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, when I have seen things like that happen, it's come from teachers who had an idea about how they could do it. So we could certainly put it out there for teachers with some ideas. But we'll see.
I don't know.
Good
Again,
idea.
sorry, I don't know.
No,
but
that's, I am not, I think you said I would call you crazy, and I'm not. I'm not. I think it's a great idea.
I'd be okay if you did though.
No, it's a good idea. Okay, any other thoughts on that part? Any other feedback? Okay, we also know that we have really high our substitute costs have increased quite a bit over the past few years. And so that's another area that we're going to be looking at, how we might be able to curb those costs. We have obligations contractually that we need to fulfill, but there are also other ways that we can look at that to some degree. So I don't know if you have much of an opinion about that other than please do, I would imagine. Yeah.
Could you just say a little bit more about that? What are your ideas to save costs there? Do you have any yet?
Well, it might be that we would not be having some of our, right now we have our staff come in for some curriculum work. For example, curriculum alignment work might be during the school day so that we can get everyone here. That might be something we aren't able to do. There are sometimes that teachers might go to some professional development, and we might say that won't be possible. There are things that we would be missing out on in order to do that. One thing that I talk about a lot, so it'll come as no surprise, is I think there are ways that we could, at the high school level in particular, not all teachers need a substitute every time they're gone, because they would be able to load sometimes they do need a substitute, but they don't need it every time. Students could work independently with passive supervision, and that is something that districts have done. But it is one way. Those are some thoughts. Teachers may also have some other ideas, though.
I have two thoughts on this. Sorry for having so many thoughts, but I have a lot of thoughts. This one is not popular, but it's just the reality of what's happening across schools. So obviously in my day job, I work with schools all over, and most of the schools that I'm working with have gone to and most of the schools I'm working with are in a much worse budget situation than we are, even though this is never good. But in order to, again, to go back to my message of protecting our students and our teachers and the courses we offer, most schools have gone away from substitutes during these really hard times. And obviously there's reasons for subs when staff are ill and things like that, but like being really flexible about the professional development time and what does that look like? And I know we approved with the calendar 3 additional professional learning days, or 2, 3, sorry, 2. Utilizing those to the fullest, which I'm sure they already are, and then what does that look like to be able to get people together? I don't know. It's not popular. Nobody's going to like it. I just think that is one that then doesn't impact our students or our losing staff. And so substitute teachers are something if I'm not saying we're ranking these or anything, I know we're going to talk a lot more deeper about that, but that's one I would like for us to take a look at as far as what are we doing? What obviously, everyone needs to fill their bucket and grow professionally. Wouldn't be in education if we didn't want to do that, but I think that's an area we should definitely take a look at. Says the person who delivers professional development.
I know. Is there anything else that you've thought of through our discussions that you want to make sure that we are considering, again, in an area, not specifics, but just big picture?
One idea that might follow Kelly's theme of not being popular, and it's potentially a fool's errand, but I'm curious if we've ever done any kind of analysis on the state unfunded or partially funded mandates that we're required to meet, and kind of cross-referencing how that aligns with our strategic plan. And if and where possible, could we look at those partially or unfunded mandates that don't align with our strategic plan and look at ways to reduce or remove those from our operations? And again, I don't know what that means entirely, but I'm just trying to think out of the box a little bit.
Okay. I will write that down. I'm not sure either. Have a,
Yeah, out of the box thinking is what it's gonna take.
Seminars or where else are there big costs? I guess.
I don't know.
Well, we'd probably look at any travel budgets, that type of thing, as a place to reduce. Again, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword because you want people to be trained. And so, but it's certainly an area we can look at.
Especially if it's areas that, I know MAIF provides grants for some opportunities, so if there's any area that is something that they could also offer and, it just would be a good opportunity, then maybe. But I guess I just don't know how much that is in savings and how significant it is.
Again, there are a number of things that we're talking about that aren't huge savings or huge, but. things to consider.
Are there savings available for districts to invest in more efficient capital equipment? Does the state provide funding for solar panels and LED light conversions and higher efficiency boilers? Or, I mean, I'm on the facilities committee, but I haven't had a meeting yet, so I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Like,
we've
are
done-
there other fixed are there capital investments we can make that reduce long-term operating costs that would make sense, that would help in the long run?
Done a lot of those over the past few years, so you've named a number of things that we went through as we've been updating. Mhm.
Yeah, the LED lighting and that type of thing. This building will be more energy efficient with the heating system that will be replaced this summer.
Besides just spinning, what does the windmill do up at the high school field? I had heard years ago that it's broken and we didn't have the money to fix it in order to use it to its capacity.
Yeah, it's been repaired and
Okay.
that's working. Yeah, it's. I don't remember exactly how much it's generating. I think it generates enough to
Okay,
light a neighborhood roughly.
okay.
But I mean, I think the whole idea, I don't have the history on that, but the whole idea, I think, was more educational than anything
Yeah.
else for it, right?
Just to Drew's point,
Yeah.
that just came to mind. Thank you.
But
I don't think, Paul, that's going to be helping us at all in our,
Hey, we got to uncover everything, right?
I think we had,
All
I
adds up.
think we had a presentation about that a couple of years ago and it was barely covering the cost of it.
We're gonna
Functioning.
put up 10 more, Kelly. That's right.
Director Peterson.
Ryan, your question about mandates at the state school board convention last week, someone in our District 6, I won't mention their school, they are they're asking the state to repeal pre-K to third grade suspensions due to time, money, and staffing it is causing their district. So you are able to go to the state and plead your case that a mandate they've instilled is detrimental to your school district.
Okay, and other areas you want us to be looking into bringing forward?
No, this is a great starting point. Thank you.
Okay. Again, the idea of this was so that when we come to you with these ideas, that none of them surprise you. You've heard them all before.
I
And
get-
now you'll understand the impact. When we come, we'll actually bring some dollar amounts as well.
Yeah, I guess my last question on this is, I think it's going to be kind of a piece from every, I don't know, small piece of a lot of different things, not just one thing. But the question, I don't know who asked it earlier, but looking at not just this next school year, but the year after, like I would want to see what does this look like in, 1 year to 2 years, maybe even up to 3 to know projected. Obviously, we're not going to have exact, but we don't, and we're not going to know what we get from the state, but at least some idea so that we don't make reactionary decisions that then we regret later.
The one thing, I find myself thinking, oh, let's just get through this year because we're going out for a levy. But we have to be realistic that maybe the levy doesn't pass. It's hard for me to imagine it, but that's a hard one to think about too, if we have to continue on with that same.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Tim. Okay, now first reading of policies.
Can you tell me where we're at? Because I'm losing track.
I'm sorry, now we're on D. So we were at the top of page 2. It's C.
ND.
10D. Okay, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, 10D.
Okay, the policy committee met and reviewed a few policies, starting with policy 515. These are all in board books, so I'm not going to present them. 515, this is based on changes at the state level, which state that we can no longer have directory information can no longer include student's address, telephone, email. And so with that, we are just updating based on statute. It's different between federal and Minnesota law, so that restrictive and what is considered directory information. So that is the primary change here. It does make some points about sharing educational data with MDE in certain cases, and then also just the notification that we must make to parents and when certain data is requested. So if we are going to send it to MDE, so that's the idea behind the changes in 515. This is the first reading, so I'm going to go over them. If you have any questions at this time, that's fine. But you may need more time to process them, and in which case you can always just give me a call and I can clarify. So with that, are there any questions about 515? Okay, policy 613, graduation requirements. These are updates. Basically, the main change is the table for graduation requirements. There's a new, the personal finance is a requirement, and those are for students who are in 9th grade this year. So that's been updated. We also did some other updates. It used to list health and FIED as electives, but they actually have some standards and they are required, so we updated that as well. And then for science, there are some changes with science regarding Earth and space and science standards. So there are a couple different changes in here, so we just needed to, although we are complying with all of them, we also just needed to update the policy with that new table. Any questions on that?
I have a question about that one. So this is one I was looking over ahead of time and was a little confused, and is it, nothing is changing, it looks, is it changing with number of credits? It's just the way they're dispersed? Because like, for example, like the electives went from 7 to 6. And is that because the personal finance was,
Added.
Health, because personal finance was added and health and PE were down in electives and now they are listed separately up above.
Or health was listed and both were. Mhm.
I was paying attention.
Yep.
and social studies has the new citizenship course, or I don't know, nothing really changed, it just sort of changed how or where they're.
We were already, and Jen could speak to this better than I can, but we were already in compliance with that citizenship being taught in Pod A and Pod B. Some districts had it in ninth grade, the civics classes. That I do, yeah, but we already had it in 11th and 12th, so we actually were already compliant with that.
Okay, yeah, it's just not understanding, but now it makes sense. Thank you.
Who teaches the personal finance course? Or not who, but like, how was it taught? Like
Our
what?
social studies department.
Okay.
And it's, excuse me, but this is the second year, right, that we've offered it?
Yes.
And it's hugely popular. Yeah, it's huge.
Because it's required?
Before it was required, a lot of students took it when it was an elective.
It won't be required until next year.
It's
Right.
required for graduation for the ninth grade students need to take it by graduation as a requirement.
Got it. Got it. Good.
11th or 12th grade.
But we've been offering it for 2 years to all grades or just 10th?
To all grades, it looks like, but I think, I don't know how many ninth graders are
It
really.
fills up right away. Is that what you're saying? Like it?
Yes. Mhm.
Oh, yeah, I think it,
More than one section,
yeah,
right?
I think that's why some other courses may be reduced or even went away because there was such popularity for this one, which is, I would say, why our system works so well and that students are, choosing which direction the courses are taking.
All right, the next one, policy 620, credit for learning. The main, the changes in here are really related to PSEO, and these were statutory this was statutory language. So part of it had to do with weighted grades, and there was new, if we weighted, a school district weighted CIS courses or concurrent enrollment courses, they needed to weight PSEO courses as well. And our conversation had been that a weighted grade is intended to align with a rigorous course. And with PSEO courses, those aren't taught by us. We don't have an idea of, like, we can't judge those courses, which courses are rigorous and which are not. And so we did change this so that AP courses are weighted only. CIS courses are not weighted. CIS courses, however, students do get college credit for those, just as they do through PSEO. And so that was the reason for the change in that.
I have a question about that. So I guess I don't understand the reasoning behind why waiting, and I understand the PSU and we don't have control over who teaches that course. But when our teachers are teaching the college and the schools course and the AP course, how do you differentiate or decide that an AP is more rigorous and should be 10% weighted grade, but not CIS?
That's what we used to have. We used to have CIS was also weighted, but if we
Yes.
weight CIS, then we have to weight PSEO as well. There's a lot, yeah. So then we would have to say that PSEO courses are also rigorous courses, which would take away the label of rigorous course.
So then is it probably because of the law change that this is standard practice across all schools are doing this same thing?
Or
Well-
they're giving weight to CIS and all PSEO classes.
Yeah, so there are schools that never weighted CIS courses. They only weighted AP. We looked into this. So there's some districts that only weight AP. There are some school districts that decided to weight all. There are some school districts that don't weight any courses.
Interesting.
And what we also talked about is that this is an internal thing. It's not colleges aren't looking at, well, I saw someone perk up when I said colleges, but colleges aren't, when they admit students, they just look at, they do their own weighting of grades because every school does things, not every school does. There are a lot of different ways to weight grades, so they have to determine something consistent anyway.
But they ask it on a college application, what's your cumulative GPA and then what's your weighted GPA? They ask it still.
If your school district weights and on
Yeah.
what, yeah, so they have to undo it all anyway. So like out in the West Coast, they might do a 5-point. There are some districts that do it at a 5. There are some, right? So it has to be recalibrated regardless.
What else is GPA used for besides sent to colleges and on applications? Do we do class rank? Do we do valedictorians? Is it actually used for anything else besides college applications?
Yeah, so we do honor roll. And then we do we
Top 10.
recognize the senior class based on top 10%. That's weighted.
I guess one more thing. I just wonder if this will influence or hurt our enrollment in CIS courses because students will choose to take just the AP that are weighted.
I don't think so. And we talked about this with our CIS teachers as well. So, we don't, like we have our world languages, our CIS world languages. Students take world languages because they're interested in, or it does help them in the future. So that's not, I don't think that's not a factor in determining whether or not they're going to. I don't think that will be the case. Because again, they do get college credit for that as well.
And it comes back to our choices now are only, we either weight nothing, or we weight AP only, or we weight AP, CIS, and PSEO. We don't have the choice of just AP and CIS and not PSEO. It's just it's not our choice anymore. The legislature knows what's best.
The other
Said
part
with
of this, is, has to do with communication between PSEO, colleges that offer PSEO and the resident district to make sure that we support our students. And this was something that we had talked about a while ago as something that we wanted to pursue on our legislative platform. And it is here that because we have had challenges with students who have, say, dropped out of their PSEO course and we didn't know about it, and then they were credit deficient, or students who were not successful and needed support, but we didn't know about it. And so now there's some requirement for communication, which is a good thing. Okay, how's everyone doing? Hang in there. All right. Any other questions about that? We're almost there. Okay. The last one is our naming policy, and this is our own policy. And we were working on updating it in anticipation of the possible capital campaign that we're going to do. And so we have a couple things in here that we updated. In general, we had a policy that was kind of ready to go, but we had a couple things we wanted to talk about. One, the guiding principles, part A. We added, generally the school board will not rename a building or facility that has been named through a board-approved community process. I have that because we have named some buildings already, and I can find a community process in the way that those were named. It was a long time ago, but I'm we have that as a general statement that if somebody wanted to rename O.H. Anderson, for example, we're saying that generally that's not something that we're looking for. So that was one. And then we also have under 3, Mahtomedi High School Board will designate the superintendent or designee to form a committee to review and make recommendations for naming opportunities. So it's just saying that we would have a committee to review this. And otherwise, the committee felt like, or the policy committee felt like everything else in here was okay. It would support what we've talked about. Okay. All right. And that's it for policies.
Sorry, does the naming, I haven't read the whole thing. Does it allow us to have a entity sponsorship? The Coca-Cola Gymnasium or the 3M?
Good, yes. Mhm.
But it couldn't be the Barb Dufferin Fieldhouse.
It cannot be the Barb Dufferin Fieldhouse, in case you were worried that that might happen. Because I am currently an employee, it cannot be named after me. So no worries, I won't be making the pitch.
Yeah.
Because we
Yes.
know that that's what you'd want.
That's right.
You
'Cause
really
I-
you really
That's
seek
right.
that
I
attention.
do. I do.
But if
All
you
right.
wrote a check for 50 million, we might.
And this
have
is
to-
just the first reading. So if you all think of more things, remember we have to do a second reading and then third reading. Okay, action items. Approval of donations and grants from December 2024 totaling $77,927.20. Have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Director Doman. Seconded by Director Regan. Any discussion? All donations and grants are greatly appreciated. The use of these funds will be to further the mission of the school district and are used according to the wishes of the donor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Okay, and now school board committee reports. AMSD.
Oh, that's me. I'll be brief. We met a couple weeks ago. I'll call it the legislative meeting. There was 4 legislators there where kind of the AMSD platform, part of the platform was discussed, but it was focused on, all the schools. It was focused on budgets, and there were really good presentations from Prior Lake, Anoka Hennepin, and St. Anthony, and everyone is singing the same music. Everyone's facing budget cuts, all the same issues related to wage increases, unfunded or partially funded mandates, enrollment declines. So everyone's in the same boat. And it was interesting to hear some of the positions from the legislators, and there was 4 of them. Really, only one of them answered any questions. And to Director Doman's point, there's at least one legislator at the Capitol that would be willing to eliminate mandates on schools. So there is that thought process up in St. Paul. But it was a good discussion. It was good to get perspective from others. But yeah, that was the essence of the meeting.
Was there discussion, so different from mandates is the change in employee law,
Oh,
so.
that was the other, yeah, thank you. That was the other item. The cost that's burdening all the schools with that particular unemployment
Unemployment.
requirement, yeah, funding of the unemployment.
That's not something we can.
Right.
Yeah, we have, we
That's
do have
more
to
than a
follow-
mandate.
That's,
a-
yeah.
And I think, yeah, I came away from it with, there is no money at the state to increase schools' budgets. So. That's it.
Maeve, Kelly.
So MAFE met on January 21st. I have a couple of points from the MAFE meeting I wanted to make sure to share, and that is, they reported on the fall fund drive and that the giving was down fairly substantially from previous years. There's a number of reasons they talked about, but the fall fund drive, participation was not as high as in the past. Couple of things though that the funded need was approved, that they are going to help with the raising of funds for new elementary playground equipment at Wildwood and OH Anderson, primarily at OH Anderson because Wildwood has the newest equipment. And so they got to see some examples of what might be possible for the playground equipment and replacing some things that are not very safe, not very age appropriate, where kids are banging their heads on monkey bars and things like that, and not very inclusive. So if a student is on crutches or in a wheelchair, things like that, and he's not easily accessible. Thought a really good question was asked though too about like even thinking about the surfaces of the playground equipment, like, you know, so it was a good conversation about like making it more inclusive to all. So so that funded need was approved at the MAFE meeting. And then, which leads me to the next point of the raising of funds for that the Zephyr Gala, I would love for you all to take out your phones and mark your calendars for April 11th.
Yep.
April 11th. I know tickets are on sale. I believe now you can get them, but I believe the early bird closes February 13th or somewhere around there. Anyway, they're available now. So there's early bird pricing. So tell your neighbors, your friends, family. They'd love to see higher participation at the gala from people who maybe haven't previously attended in other years or don't really know what MAFE is, to want to know more about it. So, so that is coming up, and we will be putting together a basket from the school board to auction off at the gala. That is not my area of strength, so I'm looking for anyone who wants to help with that basket creation and or ideas. So if you have an idea, we've done a couple different things the last few years that I've done this. So if you have any ideas, send them my way. So that's coming up because I'm guessing we'll want to get working on that relatively soon, because all of a sudden spring break comes around and then it's, you know, it's here before you know it. So Zephyr Gala, April 11th. And then the two other things. MAFE scholarships are open January 6th to February 28th. Max mentioned that. And lastly, MAFE voted to offer the class of 2025 yard signs again. So they had talked about possibly not doing the yard signs, and they had a long conversation about that and voted to approve the kindergarten kickoff as kindergartners start in our school system and as seniors graduate, to do both bookends of that sign. So thank you to MAFE for that. And I know our seniors will be excited, and they are in the countdown probably already. So that's the MAFE report for January 21st.
Great, thank you. Okay, MSBA update. Jen.
Mhm. As I mentioned, last week was the state school board convention. I went on Thursday, Barb was there. I went to the District 6 meeting, which is us, Forest Lake, North St. Paul, Stillwater, White Bear. And White Bear was very interested in when we invited our legislators in to have coffee and a donut that morning, and we got 4 out of 8 to come. Someone from White Bear said, you know, we share so many people. Would you ever do that again? Could we do it together? So I think that our neighboring districts thought that was great, and they'd love to partner up. I don't even know if that's a possibility, what rules it breaks or doesn't, but great. So just throw that on. Yeah, okay. MSBA, or State School Board Day at the Capitol, is on March 10th. And this year they are providing the service of, they will get your legislators to meet with you. They're going to set up the appointments for you. So if you want to talk to somebody that represents you, you let them know, and they're going to get that all done for you instead of chasing them down, emailing, phone calls. And coming up on Tuesday is another Zoom coffee and conversations for an hour from 8 to 9 in the morning if you want to listen in what the rest of the state is talking about. I love them.
And And finally is the Northeast Metro 16. I attended my first meeting and I shared the summary that I think Leslie sent to all of you. That, I think we just need, other board reports. Yes.
I have one more, just because the timing was off from when we met before the holidays and organizational meeting and study session. So this one goes back a ways, but I just wanted to make sure we had this on record. It goes back to December, but December 12th, the Curriculum Advisory Committee met, and just really quickly, 3 bullet points. We talked about what does it mean to be college and career ready, and looked at the portrait of a graduate and specifically the 6 characteristics of portrait of graduate. I guess that's it, 2 bullet points. Next meeting is next week and Jenny's gonna attend for me.
Other reports.
Finance Committee met today. Is there anything to report on that?
It was just a more in-depth version of what we kind of reviewed tonight as a broader group, right? I think we got a bunch of positive financial remarks and
Started to look a little bit at the projection going forward, but we can talk more about that once we know what kinds of decisions we're going to make in terms of reductions and things, so.
With that, would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carries. We are adjourned.